Hi everyone, and thank you all for coming. The first verse that I'm going to share with you comes from Joshua. It's Joshua 24, verses 14 and 15. Now therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served beyond the river and in Egypt, and serve the Lord. If it is disagreeable in your sight to serve the Lord, choose for yourself today whom you will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served, which were beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in those land you were living. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord.
Your word is a lamp unto my feet and a light for my path. I have taken an oath and confirmed it, that I will follow your righteous laws. I have suffered much. Preserve my life, O Lord, according to your word. Now it's Psalm 119, 105, 6 and 7.
Hello everyone, I will be reading from the book of Psalms, chapter 32, verse 8. I will instruct you and teach you in the way which you should go. I will counsel you with my eye upon you.
This verse is from Proverbs, chapter 3, verses 5 and 6. This is my grandma's favorite scripture reading. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths."
Now we're going to have some reflections on his mom by our group.
I want to take this time to thank the pastor and Susie, his wife, and my mom's friends that you took care of her these last couple of years. She often spoke of how grateful she was to you. And also, I want to thank Katie and Christian for taking Mom every week to the grocery store and helping her. I know it couldn't be easy. I think Christian did it so he could drive the car, right? Sharon was saying coming over that Mom would be very happy and smiling that almost all her family is here. And that didn't happen very often, so it's a great time for us to get together, even though it's a sad time. When we were starting to plan the service, Joy said, I really don't look at it as a memorial service, but a celebration of a life. And it's a celebration of a life well lived indeed. Amen. And one of the quotes that I've always liked is, famous people are rarely significant, and significant people are rarely famous. And we were fortunate. It was a gift that my mom was significant, but not really famous. I was asked to give a little bio of my mom before I start some reflections. And I don't know how you do a short bio when somebody lived for 93 years, but we'll just try to hit the high spots. Erma May was born in Johnstown, Pennsylvania on May 13th, 1925, to Jacob Leroy Eckstein and Rose Newman. Almost sounds like we should be having a Jewish wedding based on this. She was the middle child of three girls, Myra Jean, who has passed away, Mom, and Betty June. And unfortunately, Aunt Betty couldn't be with us. She's in assisted living. At the age of 6, Mom's birth mother passed away from TB. And a few years later, and it's a fairly complicated story, but her father remarried. And it's an interesting story, but we don't have time to go into it. But from all accounts, she was a very caring and loving wife and mother. And then, for some reason, I remember my mom telling me that she quit school, and I'm not sure why, but she went back, and in 1943, she graduated from Cambria High School in Pennsylvania, and she went to work in the family restaurant at Truck Stop. And she spent many hours telling us about those experiences. As she got older, and we would be able to spend more time with her, and it was a real joy just to hear of her history and her life. And about that same time, she started dating my dad, and a romance began, but it was interrupted by World War II. And after he got back from the service, they were married in 1946. But the interesting thing was that my mom told me for a year, my dad, after he got back, never came to see her. And maybe because of the war, but my mom was known for her patience, so eventually they did marry. In 1947, I was born, and then in 49, my brother Jim was born. And about the same time, her parents decided to move from Pennsylvania to Fontana, California. And my dad was working in the steel mill, and they went on strike, so they decided to pack up the Model T Ford, take these two small boys, and take a trip to California. So they headed across the country, and they lived with her mom and dad for about 6 months, and then they decided to go back to Pennsylvania, where they stayed one winter and decided that they had enough. And so they sold their little house, and in 1952 they moved to Rialto. And soon thereafter they bought a half-built house, and my best recollection is that for 50 years they constantly worked on this house. It was like the Winchester Mansion or something. So, and in 1956, my sister Joy was born, and she became Daddy's little girl. And they had a wonderful relationship all those years. Throughout the ensuing years, my parents demonstrated a godly example of love and togetherness, from raising a family to help found and literally build Rialto Brethren Church, constantly opening their home to family and friends, and to traveling missionaries and pastors. And I can remember a number of Christmases opening presents in front of people that we had no idea who they were. When Joy was a little older, my mom decided to go back to school, and she earned her AA degree in early childhood education, and for 20 years she taught and was an early childhood administrator. And during this same period, she became an accomplished artist, did toll painting, and became an outstanding porcelain doll creator. Some of them look too realistic. But in the early 70s, my dad retired, and they bought a travel trailer, and they loaded all his tools in this van, and they would travel around the United States, seeing friends, helping with building projects at church. And that really became their ministry, and that brought them great joy and blessings in the second half of their life. And they did that till Dad was basically unable to travel. And in 2004, after a long illness, which my mom was faithfully taking care of Dad, he passed away at home with Mom by his side. And every time I saw her, and probably every time she saw anybody in our family, she'd always say how much she missed him. Every day she missed him for 14 years. But in her own quiet way, she was a very strong and godly woman, and believed that God was going to continuously use her to help others and encourage others. And she did for 14 more years. You know, that was her gift. And not long after Dad died, Mom decided that she would like to move. And Jim and Joy thought it was a good idea, and they encouraged her. But I had my doubts, so I decided to talk to Mom. And I said, you know, Mom, statistically and the experts say that you shouldn't make any major decisions right after you've lost a loved one or a spouse. And her reply to me was, I've always wanted to move. Who knew? So in 2004, she moved to Redlands, and she started a new chapter in her life. And she started with a new church. She started a new small group, Red Hats. She opened her home to family and new friends, and she started over and became this, incredible blessing to many more people. The interesting thing, though, for over 14 years after Dad died, her famous line in our family was, I can't believe I've lived this long. And every time you saw her, I can't believe I lived this long. So Mom leaves behind a large family that loved her very much and missed her, and will continue to miss her. So that's a little bit about my mom as far as her history, and probably a number of you could have given that, But let me really tell you about my mom and who she was. And first I'd like to talk about some of the memories that we have, and memories can be very interesting from the standpoint of sometimes it's the first thing that pops into your head about somebody when you think about memories. And for me, the first thing that popped in my head was that when Jim and I were small, we used to push my mom, not literally, but push my mom to the brink. And she would cry. And when that happened, we found out how much my dad really loved her. And it's not a good way to find out. You probably couldn't get away with it now, but so anyway. But then Joy and I were talking, and Joy said her memories of Mom is that she was the most godly woman that she had ever met, and she was her best friend. So that's probably a better memory than mine. But she also talked about how Dad loved to tell jokes. And Mom, no matter how many times she heard the jokes, and even if she had to finish the joke, she always laughed for my dad. And that, and that's a wonderful memory. And then our daughter McCall was saying that she always remembered that Mom would store potato chips in the freezer. Now, I don't know why. And Melissa, our daughter, was saying that she remembered when Mom and Dad would come down to babysit. Mom was very creative, and she would always bring some craft for them to do. And she just always thought of them in that way. And they also said they remember that Mom would like to make Christmas presents for them. And sometimes Mom would miss the mark. And they weren't the best Christmas presents, but they always knew that it was done in love and caring for the individual. And that was Mom. And then a memory that all of us seem to have was that Mom always kept a full pantry and a refrigerator, and even their trailer was full of food, whether anybody was coming over or not. And even when she lived by herself, she kept all this food just in case somebody stopped by, and then she could show hospitality. But my fondest memory of my mom is when I was growing up, even through high school and when I returned from we would sit in the kitchen and talk. And we would talk for hours, and not so much advice, we would just talk. And I can fondly remember that when I was in Vietnam, my mom faithfully wrote me every week, and which was like still being able to talk to her. There was one time, though, that she did give me some advice. It's when we were talking and I said that I was going to propose to Sharon. And she didn't think it was such a good idea. Not because it was Sharon, but because I was only 21, and that's the age that she was when she got married. And as it turns out, we didn't get married for 3 more years, but she treated Judy and Sharon just like her daughters. I mean, she loved them, and she was a great mom. But you know, there's more to my mom than memories, and those are great to have, and we'll keep talking about those. But even more important for my mom are the life lessons that we learned from a godly woman. And hopefully we learn them and we pass them on to our children, and their children will pass them on to the next generation. For example, that of being faithful. My mom was faithful to God, to her belief and her core values, to her husband, to her family, and to her friends. And that was a real gift to us, whether we knew it or not growing up. That was a real gift. The other thing that we learned from our mom, I hope we learned, was humility. I'm sure there were hundreds of times that my mother did something for somebody that she never got the credit for. And but that was okay for her. She just wanted to be able to do something for somebody or to help them. Which leads us into one of my mom's strongest characteristics, I guess, and that was kindness. She was always kind, and with my mom, what you saw was what you got. There was no pretension. At home, she rarely spoke bad of somebody. I mean, she had her moments. She wasn't perfect, believe me. But she rarely spoke unkind about something. And the other lesson was that she had a grateful heart. She was extremely thankful for her family, her friends, and the life that God had given her. And she used to talk about that often. And lastly was a serving attitude that she had. And like I said, she was not perfect, but her attitude was always, how would God have me encourage and serve others? And I think you've all experienced that probably from my mom. And so we had this relatively unassuming woman, through God's help, listened, mentored, and comforted countless individuals over her life. And we were blessed as kids and grandkids and great-grandkids to have such a significant person in our life. One more comment. And my wife has heard this 100 times, but Barry Corey, the president of Biola, has written a book entitled Love, Kindness, in which he writes, as Christians, we need to have a firm center. In other words, hold fast to our core beliefs, but have soft edges. Meaning, care for people as individuals, listen to them, try to understand the other person's point of view, and view them as Christ's creation. That was my mom. That was our mom. That was our grandma. And lastly, Jim was telling me a few days before they went on their latest cruise, they went to see Mom. And so just to let her know that she was leaving. It's okay, those are all my grandkids. Don't mind. They went to see her just to let her know that they'd be gone. And she said to them, "Why am I here? I've been in heaven for 2 days." And who knows? I mean, but we learned through my dad not to argue with my mom. So, I mean, she could have been. But one thing we do know for sure is that she's in heaven now. Amen. And the first thing that God said to her is, "Welcome, well done, my good and faithful servant." That was my mom.